This is CoCoTALK, the nation's leading live talk show featuring the Tandy color computer. With your host, Mr. Gameplay Goodness himself, CoCoTalk.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to CoCoTALK episode 22. We are live on a Saturday. Today is April the 19th, 2017, and we've got a great show in store for you, ladies and gentlemen. And so with me on the call, we have the author of Forest Doom, all-around good-looking guy and damn fancy singer, too, Mr. Bruce Moore. Welcome to the show, Bruce.
Thank you.
And then we've got, what's-his-face up there, David Ladd. Hey, David.
Hello.
Oh, what's his face? Mark Overholzer with us as always. Richard Lorbieski is here. Ron Delvaux is here. And L. Curtis Boyle A is here. And Nick Marentes.
By the way, it's August, not April.
It's August. August, April, whatever, February, March, Ember, whatever the hell it's called. Yes, it's August. Yes, you are correct. Thank you. And then from down under, Nick Marentes. Good day, Nick. How are you?
Good day, everyone.
And maybe April down there, I'm not sure.
It's April. Yeah, you know us Americans, we can't spell. All right. So we got another great show. We got some cool things to talk about, some cool things to do. It's been another interesting week in the world of the color computer. And so, some of those highlights is that hopefully we'll find out for reasons unknown, but there's got to be a reason. But Nick Marentes has decided to release a 1.1 update to his Pac-Man game. So hopefully he'll share with us reasons. I know one of the reasons was, changing the color and stuff, but I'd like to be curious what was the kind of motivation there. So that's kind of cool. What else has been going on this week? Well, we got another demo from Simon Jonasson to take a look at, his 3D spinning cubes. Bruce Moore has been dipping his toes into the water of Basic 09, so we'll show a little preview of that, maybe talk about that process and development a little bit. We're going to have Ron's Garage, where Ron's going to show us something pretty cool. We got Tech Talk with David Ladd and maybe Curtis Boyle, too, and who knows what else we're going to talk about. So, very cool. And live in the call, I want to first say hello to Steve Powell. So Steve has been here since about 20 after 1 p.m. So Steve's been here for a long time. He says he's doing other things. He just wanted to have it open and ready. So you get the award for the first caller of the day for sure.
Treasure, 100 points.
So there you go. 100 points of treasure has been awarded to you. So and I will try not to overuse the soundboard today. I promise. Right? So Gotta have more cowbell, right? So thanks for being here, Steve. We also have Richard Cavell in the call and everybody else. So very, very cool. So let me go ahead and just look at some feedback and look at some numbers this week on a few things that have happened in the show. So let's start with looking at our most recent episode. So last week's episode of CoCoTALK right now has peaked the charts at 178 views right now. So that's still pretty good. We've been averaging about 200 views a week. You notice that episode 20 got about 211 views. Really popular topics was the hardware discussions, got 263 views. Our Nitrous 9 discussion, 250 views. So yeah, CoCoTALK has been getting some pretty good views right now. So we're just shy of 180 views from last week's talk is not too shabby. And I think one of the things that might be helping with that, or helping or hurting depending on how you look at it, but since we have been also now, CoCoTALK is also a podcast that you can listen to in audio format. We've had just shy of 400 downloads on podcasts this week. So 383 podcast downloads. And so I guess, how do you look at this? Do you look at this as competition? Am I competing with myself? I'm not sure. But, if people are listening rather than viewing, maybe that's why we have a few less views, but we've got a heck of a lot of listens. So all things combined, we're in about the 600 mark in this past week, which is pretty cool. So thank you for everybody who's been watching and listening. And then a couple comments from some of the stuff that's been going on YouTube. I got a comment recently on one of my programming and basic videos where this person, Alex Blackburn, said, "I love these videos, so in-depth and the only source that teaches us basic that I've found on the internet. Huge help." So thank you there, Alex. Rudy Kazuti, our friend from, I think he's in Ireland. He's the one who suggested I play that Ken Kalish game, right? Dungeon Raid. And then he's actually chimed in with some tips on the game. He says a tip for anyone who's trying to beat, and his high score right now is 124,600. He made it to level 5. He says there's 5 levels. There's 3 levels, and then the game loops and the enemies speed up dramatically. So he's actually given us some tips. He's pointed out a glitch in the game. He's telling you when you got to steer left and what to look for and what to avoid and stuff. So I guess when you can spend some good quality hours on a game and you kind of get to learn the the insides and outs. So he shared some very good tips there. So check out that comment for some good playing tips if you want to get really proficient at Dungeon Raid. Now here's another cool one too. So this is how all this stuff happens. It's just like, things fall out of the sky. But Rob Shaw, the author of Shock Trooper and Tutankhamun and a handful of other games, he found my video on YouTube and he says, "It was so cool to see my game reviewed on YouTube 31 years after I wrote it, by the way. One inaccuracy here is that it was released in 1986 because I was in the university at that time." And then he said, "Well, if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask." So I have basically said to him, would you like to do an interview? I sent him my email address, and hopefully we'll hear from Rob, and maybe we can line up a Rob Shaw interview. That would be very, very cool. All right?
Yeah, so, he's a nice guy. I talked to him back when I did the pages on the games page there for his stuff by email. And he actually gave me some tips, like there's some hidden features in 1 or 2 of the games and stuff too.
Okay.
So I'm hoping you can get him on for an interview. It'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, that would be cool. So, so then the question becomes: Is this a standalone interview? Do we make it part of CoCoTALK? That's really not that important as long as we get the interview. And speaking of interviews, one of the things I've been doing too is taking some of the older interviews that we've done and also converting those to audio. So right now on our website, CoCoTALK.live, there's the first 10 episodes are fully converted to audio and 3 different interviews. So there's the interview where Curtis and I first spoke at length. There's our first interview with Rick Adams, which I think it's pretty cool when you look back on things we discussed a year ago to what has happened then. It really goes to show you what's been going on in this community. Like Curtis brought up the discussion on an interview that Nick had with him like in 1999, where he had talked about, well, I made this game called Bomb Threat, but Tandy never bought it. And for me, that was the first time I ever heard of that, kind of lost gem, right? So we talked about that about a year ago in an interview with Rick. And of course, as most of us know now, he is about to release Bomb Threat again. So it's kind of cool to see how some of these things come full circle with some of these interviews. We did that interview, the Rick Adams interview, and the Dale Lear interview, which was another good interview too, I thought, and that was kind of co-interviewed with Rick Adams, and of course Curtis and Nick were there too. So a couple of good interviews, and all of those interviews I think played very well to the audio format when I listened to them. So I think we're getting some good positive response from people who are saying, I enjoy the fact I can now consume this show in a different way. So that was a great idea. That was Curtis's idea. I got to give Curtis all the credit for that. So remind me to pay you one of these days, Curtis. So, so going around the room here, who's got anything to chime in on? Like, what has your week been like as far as projects and retro things and other items of interest? Anybody want to jump in there?
I haven't done too much because of work scheduled as usual during my rush season, but I have been trying to talk to Bruce and Nick a little bit when they were, fiddling around with Basic 09 and Nitrous 9 stuff. Just to see if I can help him out a tiny bit. I know Nick actually got a boot from Bill that ran pretty stably for him, which I think was unexpected for him, but we'll get into that in a bit more detail later.
Yeah.
Right before he shoots it all down.
You want me to talk about it?
Well, I guess if we go ahead and if you want to lead off, Nick, and we'll talk about Pac-Man 1.1.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, well, I released Pac-Man 1.1, which isn't really very different from the previous version. It's just a few little things that always niggled me over the years that I wish I had done that. It was so simple to do. Why didn't I do it? So I thought, what the hell? You know, we've had Glenn Hewitt's arcade transcode release lately, and that sort of inspired me to just do these little patches to finalize Pac-Man as such. There's no changes to the code. The code was really unchanged.
Okay.
The changes were done in the loader. So when the loader comes out, I changed that a bit. I removed the option for selecting PAL versus NTSC color and the 50 hertz, 60 hertz timings, because no one played it under the 50 hertz timings anyway.
Okay.
And over here in Australia, we select 60 hertz anyway, and 50 hertz tends to run it slightly slower. And because I had to make the game support both 50 hertz and 60 hertz, there was another problem in that I noticed in the intermission tunes. When playing the intermission, the timings were a little bit slower in order to compensate for the 50 hertz mode. And it always bugged me because I always thought the intermission tune was just a bit low in its pitch. So I removed the NTSC, the 50 hertz, 60 hertz option, made it all 60 hertz, and then just adjusted the timings for the intermission to run properly at 60 hertz. So that was the main thing I wanted to change. It always irked me that the pitch was wrong.
Okay.
The only other thing I changed also was the color of the maze. In the original, it was slightly a lighter blue, and it should have been a bit darker to match the arcade a bit more. So I just did a change to the color blue, and really that's about it. Nothing more. It's really otherwise really much the same. The loader has a little Pac-Man in it.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah, I like that. That was cute. It's better than the old bar going across.
Yeah. Well, it's essentially the same as the old bar, except instead of a bar, I've got a Pac-Man character eating all the dots, which I thought was more suitable for the game anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the Nintendo Wii when you do get your updates and you have the little arrow ring across as it's downloading the update, and it keeps bumping the coins up as the update downloads. It's kind of an animation of their own character, and you did the same thing.
Yeah. 6C has joined us in chat, and Home Computer Museum says hi, everyone. Hello, Home Computer Museum. Richard Cavell is here in chat. Yeah, I'm going to see if I can get to the intermission, and I do notice that the blue is a little bit darker. Yeah, it's kind of cool that we do look at this again. It's just kind of, like you mentioned, that we had the Pac-Man transcode released recently. Out of curiosity, how long did all of that take you? Like, how many hours did you put into all these changes?
The changes didn't take too long. It was because I still had the source code, of course, for Pac-Man. So it was just a matter of looking at the code and just finding out what areas of memory the bytes were I had to change in order to make the change. And once I located the exact values in memory where they are, I then just went into the loader program. After it finished loading the program, it would just do a few pokes to change those to the new changes. And that's about it. The thing that took the longest was the little Pac-Man in the loader.
Okay.
I tried a few things, and that was the one I came up with. Yeah.
Okay.
Did you want to demo the loader, Steve, or?
I can do that. Yeah. It is kind of cool. So we'll show that. That's kind of cool. And yeah, of course, now getting me to make it to the second level is going to be a challenge because that requires somebody with actual game playing skills. So we will do, and of course, I'm doing this on my CoCoSDC, brought to us by the makers of CoCoSDC. Here we go, Pac-Man Bass. I'm all about that bass, baby.
So that's the new options screen. it's only got 2 options, whereas the previous one had a few more. Just the selection of the RGB or composite. And I think I might have also tweaked the composite palette slightly as well. Because back when I wrote it, I didn't have a composite NTSC monitor, so I just whatever information I could find in a magazine saying this is the RGB to composite conversion, that's all I did. And I just assumed, okay, that must be right. But now that I do have an NTSC composite, I think some of the colors were slightly off. So I just tweaked those, and I've kept the option for the keyboard selection. One thing actually I wasn't sure of, because I hadn't played it for a while. I was wondering if I'd forgotten I had actually added joystick control in the game. Whenever I used to play it, I played it with the arrow keys, and of course I was terrible at it, and I couldn't understand why am I playing it so badly. I used to play it much better than this. So I thought, oh well, I'm going to have to patch it to allow the joystick to work. But as it turned out, when I went through the code, I saw there was code in there already. Because when the game starts, it doesn't really say press. Well, it does say.
It says press the button, I think.
It does say press joystick button, but for some reason I'd forgotten that the joystick actually worked. So the joystick's fine. Just press the button on the joystick and away it goes. And I think there was one fellow on the Facebook page was asking, if the keys work on under VCC, and I said, I'm pretty sure they do. So I tested it last night and put a message up saying, yeah, they do, but I don't recommend it because it's just so awkward to play with a normal diamond cluster cursor.
Yeah, it's not very forgiving either on the...
my fingers tend to get stuck in a knot, basically. But joystick is the way to play Pac-Man, and that's the way to play it. And if you want to press enter to continue. Most cases you don't need to change any of these settings.
There we go. Here's Mr.
And
Chompers.
there's the Pac-Man. High definition.
This is the ultra HD 4K right now, right? So
that's the one.
Yeah, that should almost be a meme, right? Because all the TVs now are called 4K. We should have something like, well, in my day, 4K meant something else.
Yeah, that was how much RAM we had in our computers.
That's right.
Yeah, so it is.
16K.
It is flashing on the screen right now. Press joystick button to play. And I don't have a joystick connected at the moment, but I'll try it one more time and see if I can't reach the intermission.
I'd also removed the serial number display on the title page because when I sold it, I had it. Every copy was serialized, so I figure, well, if I'm gonna just give it out for free, what's the point of the serial number? So,
you had alternate keys you could select too, like Alt, Control, and left, right arrow or something, didn't you? Can't remember.
That was on a different game. I think that was on Gatecrasher.
3 or 4 option keys. Because I could never use
the old diamond cluster's way too.
I think that's the way I used to play it actually. Before I had the joystick hooked up, I would choose the keyboard options and choose Alt and Control and Alt for up and down because that matched the CoCo2 keyboard. And allowed your hands to be separate, and you could just more comfortably control it with the keyboard.
Yeah, back in the day, the Apple IIs only had just the left and right arrow, and so typically the games would use A and Z on the opposite side of the keyboard for up and down.
I remember that, playing Gorgon and a few others.
Yep.
Well, it's kind of interesting comparison, too, because you did this, like around 2007-ish?
Wasn't it earlier?
This is the update, yes. The original game was 1997.
Oh, 1997. Wow. Okay, so here it goes. In 1997. So what we have right now for the Coco 3 is this is the original or the first Pac-Man. Of course, this is not a licensed one. This is your port of Pac-Man, but you wrote this from scratch. And you had to take we talked about this a while ago. You had to kind of take your best guess at what the algorithms were for the patterns of the ghosts and things like that. you recorded with a cassette recorder all of the sounds and then digitized those. Which
that's
was
right. I didn't have the internet at 1997.
Yeah. Al Gore had not invented it yet. So, and you had to write the program. So you actually had to write your own version of Pac-Man. And so what we have now with the Glenn Hewlett version is not a custom from scratch version, but the actual arcade code has been transcoded. So we've got two versions of Pac-Man now. We've got Nick Marentes' version, which he wrote from scratch, and then we've got Glenn Hewlett's version that he basically converted from the arcade. And so for the time that you had done this in 1997, really, really impressive. And some of the choices you made to keep the aspect ratio of the board and the playing field. So you put the scores off to the side, so we have the full tall aspect ratio and things like that. And it plays very well. One of the things I did notice about Glenn's version, because Glenn's version is running the original code. The original code was written for 3 voice channel synthesizer, which we don't actually have. So every now and then we lose something in the audio. Because you actually had to write yours from scratch and you took all these things into consideration, I noticed that we always hear the sirens, and then we do hear either the wop 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 sound when he's blinking, or the the kind of explosion sound when you eat them. So your audio decisions seem to favor the sounds that we need to hear the most at all times, where on the transcoded version, every now and then we're going to possibly miss something that would have been there, because the software's got to make that decision. Which 2 of the 3 channels do I output? So, but they're both great versions of the game, and both worthy of celebration. Very cool stuff.
One of the biggest challenges was to get the Pac-Man intelligence to be the same. Of course, nowadays you can go on the internet and find out what the actual intelligence is for the Pac-Mans, how they react, how they travel and navigate the maze. Of course, in 1997, that wasn't available. So I had to sort of come up with my own intelligence that at least looked like it was like from the original. And I think I got a fairly good interpretation of it. Seems to play very similar.
Oh yeah, no, it looks good, plays good. The slightly darker blue palette now for the maze looks much more arcade accurate. I had not noticed it that much before, but now that I see this, more of a navy blue, it definitely looks more arcade accurate. And yeah, I would imagine that has to present some challenges, because what's the maximum color palette of the Coco? You got 64 colors, and most of the 8-bit games, and so 64 colors is what, 6-bit of color, something like that. And most of the arcade games had 8 bits of color, so we had 256 colors. So at some point in time, you've got to make a creative decision, saying, well, in the arcade it was this level of red, green, or blue, which requires a higher depth of bits per pixel, which we don't have. So we have to trade off somewhere, and you're never going to get every single color possible, because our palette is a much smaller palette of colors. So I guess certain decisions and compromises have to be made there, right, when you're making those choices.
Yeah, I don't know how the arcade, how many colors the arcade machine actually had. So I think a lot of arcades really may have only had 16 colors, but they could have varied the colors. I think they used some sort of a resistor bank or whatever to fine tune each of the colors. I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the original arcade Pac-Man was 16 colors on the screen at once, but I don't remember what their palette.
Yeah,
what the palette capabilities were.
I think they were able to fine tune it.
Yeah, no, it's a damn good version there, and very nice of you to just release that to the public, right? So the other way to get that now, in the past it was available for sale when it was a new product. It's now part of the bundle. So if somebody buys Popstar Pilot from you, which you've also put on the Facebook group, it's included on that CD. Your entire catalog of Coco games is now part of the Popstar Pilot package, which is a great value. Very, very cool. Cool. What do you guys think?
Now, Nick, do you have any inclination to go through some of your other previous games? Because I know you've mentioned there's a few other things that you wish you had done differently back in the day.
Well,
any plans for that, or just thinking about it, or?
Yeah, and I was also thinking of going through my Gate Crasher as well, the 3D game I did, and it plays all right. But the thing is, there was once again, there's at least two things that have niggled me ever since the beginning. So as usual, the niggles will eventually get to me. So one is the graphics have a bit of a fisheye look to them. Like straight lines tend to have a bit of a curve the further they go in the distance. That is a bit of a side effect of the Gloom engine that Sockmaster has, just the way it creates the 3D. And because I used a lower resolution than what Sockmaster did for his demo, it stands out a bit more. You can see corridors tend to have a bit of a fisheye. They curve in the distance a bit. So I was thinking of looking at that and trying to see if I can straighten them up a bit. The other thing also, I find that whenever I shot a target, it was very fussy. You very much had to hit a target spot on, and because it's low res again, everything tended to move fairly quickly in front of you. So one moment it's in front of you, the next moment it's moved away a bit, and quite often it looked like I'd hit something, but unfortunately by the time it actually fired, it would have moved that little bit and it missed. So I'm going to make that a bit more lenient on. You can be a bit off target a bit and it'll hit a target, so it'll be a bit less frustrating, hopefully.
Okay, because I do remember back, I think when we interviewed you, or maybe when I was talking to you at some point, I remember you mentioned that Rupert Rhythm, you'd always wanted to change the algorithm so that the elevators would always come up to where you were, as opposed to you having to wait for the whole stupid cycle. Yeah,
no, there's that one's got a lot of things I want to change, so that one's a big job. I don't like that one. I'm going to bury that one.
I wouldn't mind if you changed that one, because I've never actually wanted to see that ending show that it supposedly has. So kind of.
Well, maybe I'll put out a poke that you can do to bring it up immediately.
Well, I want to earn it somewhat. It's so frustrating when you're waiting for the thing to stop 4 times and it's going the other direction, and you're getting hit by those.
Maybe I can just add some text that says written in OS 9.
Well, then I'd just switch to another window and play something else. But
cool stuff. Cool stuff.
Yeah, but that's all I have planned. Eventually.
Okay. Joystick support for that might be kind of cool too for the Gate Crashers. I don't know if that's a major rewrite at that point.
Yeah. That's right. It doesn't use joystick. Well, there's another good option. Yeah, I didn't think of that. Yeah,
I remember when you and I were reviewing the game last year or whatever it was. So we were talking. I was saying if I had a wish list, it would be joystick support for that game, because it is a little bit tedious. When you're looking at like a Castle Wolfenstein Doom style game, those games played well with the joysticks even.
Yeah, it would give you more variability on speed for turning too, because right now you have like regular speed, or if you hold down shift, you get double speed. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll start it this afternoon.
Should be done by next show, right?
Now you've given me more things to niggle about.
Yeah, right.
All we're actually doing is delaying Gunstar, apparently.
Yeah, right. Priorities, right? Priorities. So.
See, Nick can multitask without OS 9. See?
He single tasks. He just takes on a project for a week or two, and then
I stop the other.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Cooperative.
Let me interrupt us all for just a second here, because I want to take a commercial break, but for a very special reason. I have a very cool commercial I want to share with you guys, and we'll talk about it afterwards. I'll probably hear some of your reactions during the commercial, because I'm not going to mute your stuff. But we're going to take a quick pause for the cause. We're going to hear a word from our sponsors, and then we'll be right back.
We will be back after these messages. Let the Radio Shack TRS-80 put the world of color computing into your home. Instant loading program packs turn any color TV into an exciting game arcade. And there's more. The color computer is an educational aid, a home management tool, an up-to-the-minute electronic information service. The programmable, expandable TRS-80 color computer from $399 only at Radio Shack, the biggest name in little computers.
Are you ready? For the forest of doom. Where can you catch all the latest news and information about the Tandy color computer and compatibles? Oh yeah, I'm talking about the Coco Crew podcast. Dig it each month. Join John, Neil, and Mike as they lay down the latest news and information about the Radio Shack Tandy color computer and compatibles. Groove to interviews, tech segments, and discussions all about the Radio Shack Tandy color computer. Strut your fine self over to www.cococrew.org and start listening today. The Coco Crew Podcast. Keeping it Coco, dig?
What'd you guys think of that?
Very groovy.
Somebody needs to lay off the acid.
I thought I was tripping balls there.
The sound seems to go in and out.
That was
Like John's comment.
so that was so that was a world premiere right there. Hey, John Linville is here. What's going on, John? So John says, "Oh my God, I'm associated with hippies." I just threw together like a little funky slideshow to go with the music. I was really impressed with that. I like that. That Myro is one talented mofo, ain't he?
And John, I mean, Red Hat's open source, so isn't that kind of hippie-ish anyways?
And I wanted to come back real quick to get your reactions to that. But one more segment I want to add to our shows, because we're also going audio too. I thought it would be cool to put in little music bumpers in here too. So I've compiled an assortment of some Coco music clips. So let's play a real quick Coco music clip real quick too, because I had a lot of fun listening to these guys. So this was a random video game music track for your listening pleasure. Hold on one second. There we go. Frogger and Megabug. A little bit of Coco music for your listening pleasure. So look forward to more musical interludes on future episodes of CoCoTALK as well. So, yeah. Cool commercial, right?
Yep.
Absolutely.
I'm still tripping balls from it. But yeah.
Dig. Get your groove on with the Coco Crew. Dig. That is some good stuff. And we're anxiously awaiting the next episode of the Coco Crew podcast. No pressure. No pressure, John. Just oh, man. Okay, so that was cool. That was cool. So, Nick, thanks for doing that update of Pac-Man 1.1. We're definitely looking forward to future tweaks to some of your other classics, but if, Gunstar. 2 words, Gunstar.
Eventually.
Oh, man. Good stuff.
The other bit of news. The only other bit of news is that in 2 weeks, I'm presenting a talk about, all my programming exploits, everything from the TRS-80 Model 1 and the color computer. and I'll be demoing some of the color computer stuff that I've done, and generally the color computer itself. But I'll be demoing it at a Apple Fest. I'm going to an Apple Food Fest. So I don't know how that'll go.
Make sure you wear body armor.
And I'll educate a few Apple II people about what our Coco can do, or I'll just come home with a face full of tomatoes. So
go to Apple Fest and get tomato bathed. Yeah. Norlander in the chat too. Sorry for not acknowledging you sooner. Says I get a kick out of those commercials for the Coco 1 in 1982 when I bought my first Coco with 32K. It cost me $649 Canadian. So yeah.
when I bought mine in the late summer of 1981, 4K was $549 Canadian.
Wow. That's cool, Nick. That's and I know we talked about this briefly. And if you're able to take pictures or video or something, it'd be kind of cool to have you be our correspondent and show us what some other festivals are like. And speaking of festivals, I wanted to talk about this, and I don't know if John's still there. And John, if you want to call in on Skype and join us, we'd love to have you, John W. Linville. But one of the things that the Coco crew was talking about when they, every week they talk, or every month they talk about the different events that are coming. So they talk about VCF and Kansas Fest and all these things. And for the longest time, they were talking about Coleco Expo. And the big running joke with Coleco Expo is that it's featuring whatever her name was, some 21-year-old chick from some Disney show. I forgot her name, Sophie Lawrence or Sophie Reynolds or something like that. But so Coleco had this expo, and I think it was just earlier this month. It was recently. It was within 2 or 3 weeks ago. And there was a little bit of drama surrounding this Coleco Expo. And because I'm also a member of a group on Facebook that's called ColecoVision Lunatics, and there's another one called ColecoVision Fan. So for those of you guys who aren't aware, whoever currently owns the company Coleco, Coleco has been a dead entity since 80-something, whenever. Somebody bought up the name, bought up the rights, and they're now trying to promote Coleco. What they did was basically poo-poo on the communities and the fan sites and everything else, and they went after any Facebook page that had the name Coleco or ColecoVision in it, went after these different websites, went after everybody, and really tried to strong-arm the community, which you can't survive without your community. And there were a bunch of videos posted on Facebook in this ColecoVision group. People are walking around with their phones, and it was a disaster. It was a huge area, so they had a giant space, but these people are walking around in the middle of the day on a Sunday. All the vendors are sitting there twiddling their thumbs. It was maybe a couple of dozen people were there, and it was a train wreck. And I'm not saying this because I'm happy about this. I don't take any joy in one of these festivals not doing well, because at the end of the day, if I was a vendor and I had spent money, I would have hopefully had a turnout to be able to sell something, So I feel bad for the vendors. I feel bad for the people who showed up wanting a good experience and didn't have one. But I think the lesson to be learned there is that you can't have these festivals without the community support. And when you kind of pee all over that community, this was karma. Karma came back big time. And it's tragic and it's sad, because I would love to see all retro things succeed. So I'm really looking forward to what you're going to be doing, Nick, in Australia there with this Ozfest for the Apple. Because even though, yes, we've had our rivalries in the past and stuff, we don't truly hate them. Well, maybe David Ladd, but we hopefully we've grown up enough now where we don't have those same rivalries where all that kind of stuff. So I want this Apple Fest to succeed. We obviously want Tandy Assembly to succeed, and there's no reason why it won't, because it's embracing the community. It's embracing several communities. But I just think that it was probably kind of worth mentioning that one of these things didn't go well, and it's unfortunate that it didn't, but take notes, right? Don't forget the communities themselves that attend to these things. So if you can bring back photos or video or anything else while you're there, it'd be great to play those on a future CoCoTALK, just kind of corresponding on another event in a foreign land even, So.
Hey, Steve, can I say something about that?
Yeah.
I was just going to say that I'm, of course, a longtime Apple guy and only recently into Cocos. But, I see from the Apple side, a lot of the Apple people who were Apple started with Apples, which is, kind of a limited group compared to, because the cost was so much more than a lot of the other systems. Mm-hmm. But as it's gone on, they've kind of wondered, what was it about those Ataris or the Commodores or the Tandys, and so they bought in other systems, the other people that are into this still. And then on the other side, there are a lot of people that have come to the Apple recently because they were a Coco, or an Atari or Commodore, and they, I used those in school, and I never could get one, and now I can get one.
Right. So true. There's definitely crossover, and there's and hopefully not only is there crossover interest, but I'm assuming there's even crossover camaraderie between these communities, because I know John Linville has mentioned all the time that if you go to Kansas Fest, it's like a summer camp for Apple people, but they let Commodore people in there, and they let us in there, and we get along. So same thing with these Commodore festivals and stuff. So I think these other communities are welcoming of other fans of other systems, and you hit the nail on the head there. Like, I was lucky to have the Coco when I was a kid, and I had to take a job to afford it and stuff. There was no way I could have afforded 2 or 3 systems back then. There's no way I could have had a Coco and an Apple and a Commodore and an Atari. The Coco was about the most affordable system, or one of the more affordable ones. Nowadays, I'm lucky I have an Atari 8-bit system. I haven't actually powered it up yet, but I have one. I've always wanted one. If I could get my hands on an Apple II, would I get one? Oh, hell yeah. Right? So to have your hands on that nostalgia, and would I be a fan of it? Yes, I would. But even now, it's like I have in a box 4A. I've yet to take it out of the box. And I think I got it for $40. So, if I could get an Apple for $50, if I can get a Commodore for under $100 or something like that, I'd probably grab them to have them, put them on a shelf to display them, and, fire them up. I'm always going to go back to the Coco. I'm going to spend my most time on the Coco, but sure, I'd love to have one to play with and hook up and maybe record some videos and show off what it's like. If I would love to be able to go to all these conventions, VCEs and the Southern Fried Gaming Expo and the World of Commodore. I would love to attend all these things just to see what everybody else is doing too. So it's great that Nick has that opportunity.
Hey, Mark, I was going to ask you about that because, I remember back in the 80s, the rivalry between the different 8-bit systems was pretty heated. Everybody was fighting for their own platform. Yeah, I think there's still a little bit of a rivalry, but it's more of a friendly rivalry. It's just like, we can do good stuff too type of thing. It's not a, your system sucks and mine's great like it used to be back in the 80s. Is that your kind of view and what you see? Because you're probably more involved with some of the other platforms than I am.
Yeah, it is. There was back in the day, the Commodore rivalry was, well, we got this really great sound chip and graphics. Yeah, but your disk drives really suck. But we got these fast load cartridges. Yeah, I know. I have a couple myself. They work pretty good. But and nowadays I think everybody's matured a lot. And they realize each platform has its strength. The Commodore 64 has its graphic and sound chip. And the disk system, it's pretty weak. The Apple, doesn't have any hardware support and just 1-bit sound, but it's got a pretty good disk system, very flexible. 80 column was, early on very, very viable, even in the early 80s. And so...
And it was expandable. You had 6 cartridge slots, which most machines didn't.
Yeah, which didn't have. You had to buy the MPI or the Commodore. Man, the Commodore 64, you're lucky if you found one that had a pass-through card. I don't think they ever made anything. I think they made some later for the Commodore that would let you have multiple slots. But, yeah, the MPI is really great on the Tandy. And then I don't really know that much about the Atari, but it did have the Pokey for the sound and it was a player missile graphics, basically sprites. And their disk system was okay too. But, people have matured and they've got to the point where they realize there's differences. The Coco, what's cool about it is it actually has a better processor than pretty much all the others because it's not strictly 8-bit. Mm-hmm. And besides, and then decent graphics, of course. But, still it's short on, there's no sound chip like the Commodore or the Atari had. But anyway. Yeah, just people have gotten more mellow, I think, and they realize the strengths and weaknesses of each, and now they try to collect them because hey, they can.
Yeah,
right.
To be honest, growing up in the 80s, the Atari versus the TI versus the Tandy versus the Apple, et cetera, kind of reminded me of the 90s part when it was like Mac versus Windows type thing. It was a heated rivalry.
Versus Next versus Sun.
Yeah, in the live chat, Sixy, who's Karen, says, I guess the Apple equivalent here in the UK would be like buying the BBC Micros, which was really expensive at the time. And Solstice says, rivalry done right motivates innovation.
I have to agree with that. Rivalry without hate, actually, I think it does, because you kind of compete with each other. And, I'm going to see if I can do something better. It's a friendly rivalry.
And when it comes to communities, just like the Coco was an underdog when it was current, our community, as far as the size of our community, is somewhat of a minority number, I would think, too, because when you look at something like Atari Age or some of these other communities, because there were much more units sold over the time, too, there's a larger fan base. And so, and you see similar things happening in those communities where people are making new brew games onto cartridges, and people are pushing the limits of like the Atari 2600. Most of the new brew stuff on the Atari 2600, you look at it, you're like, wow, why couldn't somebody do that back in 1980? The same thing we say about the Coco, because you didn't have the time, or you learn more with time goes on. Yep. So the new brew community on almost all of the 8-bit platforms. John Linville has posted one of the games that somebody wrote for the Apple II, that he was selling it in the package with the Ziploc bag and the cassette tapes and all that kind of stuff. So the authentic packaging. So it's great that these things still happen. These communities exist, and people are developing new hardware, new software. The Coco SDC, a version of that exists for just about every 8-bit platform. I just listened to Randy Kindig talk about Ian Maverick's, all his products, the thing that's called the Fred, which is a hard drive emulator that uses an SD card or a compact flash, whatever the case was. So we've all got these new brew hardware and software devices that are pushing the systems and showing what they can do and what they could have done. And so I like that statement there, that we can kind of motivate innovation, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
And to be honest, I think that's why John brings up a lot of these other shows about other platforms, or even projects from other platforms, as an inspiration to, see what they're able to do, and, inspire somebody to do something similar, or get inspired by it to do something even beyond on the Coco side.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Okay, David Ladd says I'm going to have to go. David says he's going to have to go soon. I was getting ready to ask. I'm sorry, Nick, to cut you off before we get right back to Nick. So I was going to say who wanted to go next on their segment. So we'll let David go next. Go ahead, Nick. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say I might take Mark McDougall's Apple II port of LoadRunner and run it on the Apple on the Coco.
That would be good. That'd be good to show off at
I can do it too.
Apple Fest.
See if I can start a rivalry again.
Right?
Then I will come home with a face full of tomatoes.
Whatever you can do, we can do better. Louis Fernandez is here.
Talking about all that rivalry, during the Apple Fest, we actually have got planned to go and attend a Commodore meeting. I don't know if it's a fest nearby. Actually, there's a Commodore 64 mini one-day event happening nearby, and that's going to be one of the things that we're going to do. We're all just going to, the whole Apple Fest people are just going to go to the Commodore 64.
We'll crash the party.
That's cool. That's cool. Just make sure you bring your.
Keep your rivalry going. No.
It reminds me of like the old gang war movies of the 70s. Make sure you got your leather jackets and your baseball bats and your chains wrapped around your hands and stuff. So.
The Apple gang.
The Apple gang. Warriors, come out and play. In the live chat, we've got Feiscap is here and Luis Fernandez. And David, you ready for your tech segment?
As best as I'm going to be, I guess.
Well, before we start your tech segment, I need to go to the infographic card. Are you ready for this?
Sure.
This is a professional production here, folks. Expect nothing less. Hold on one second here.
The bar is raised.
Time for Tech Talk with David Ladd and Curtis Boyle. Take it away, tech dudes.
Take it away, tech dudes. It's Tech Talk.
Actually, before we get to the Tech Talk, I just want to go one step back for the rivalry for a second. I remember in high school, we had Apple II Pluses. We had a whole lab full of them. And occasionally they would let us stay late on Friday nights and just play games, until the janitors kicked us out because they wanted to go home. And there was a few times where we actually had all the other kids that had different machines, VIC-20s, Commodore 64s, Cocos, etc., would bring them in. And we'd play like the rival or the same games that were ported to the different machines. And I remember the Apple people, when they first saw the Coco version of Zaxxon, were really impressed compared to the Apple II version of Zaxxon. Mm-hmm. So we had this friendly rivalry even going in. We had all these machines set up side by side, and people would jump over and play somebody else's machine. It was a lot of fun.
Very cool.
we had that rivalry between kids. A lot of the kids had different computers at the time. I had a TOS-80. Another fellow had an Apple. We used to call him the Apple user. Another guy, I remember, had a Sinclair ZX80 or 81. You remember those?
Yeah, the RAM tone keyboard.
Yeah, and those things. Whenever it had to write to the screen, it couldn't refresh the screen at the same time as writing to the screen.
Yeah, so it'd flash.
It would flash even while you're typing a basic program. It would go on off. And I remember we used to stir this guy who had this. Every time we walked up to him, we say, "Oh, I can't remember his name, but to say it was Bill. You know, oh, hi, Bill, how are you?" And we'd say that, blinking our eyes at him.
The computer had Tourette's.
We used to bug the people with those there. You know, have you had your epileptic seizure yet? You know, it would just flash like a strobe light if you're trying to type a program.
Yeah, right. All right. Well, we are now going to be talking about Tech Talk with David Ladd, and Tech Talk is sponsored to you by I'mACoconut.com. For all your color computer needs, make sure you visit I'mACoconut.com. All right, David Ladd, how are you today this week, sir?
Oh, not too bad. Not really too much in the realm of breaking stuff. Just found a couple issues with the Toolshed project, but you know, those were pretty quick fixes, thankfully. So as far as only interesting hardware tidbit that I saw that someone pointed out, I think it was Richard Cavell had mentioned, was Ron's thing with the CoCoSDC and the real floppy drives, where the floppy drives weren't shutting off. Now, I have not been able to verify this because my power supply that I use to power my floppy drives died, so I can't use real floppy drives at the moment. But I'm thinking that the issue that he described, which is when he did a backup using the CoCoSDC from a real floppy drive to the SDC's image, the floppy drives were staying on after the backup was done. And I'm thinking that's just because the CoCoSDC's, the SDC DOS is not switching back to the slot that has the floppy disk controller to actually turn off the floppy drives. So that's the only little real major thing that I've seen this week that would be, yeah, an annoyance, but it's not that bad of a fix.
Yeah, can I chime in here? I tried the poke that somebody left on the board to see if that would turn it off, and it didn't. And I tried a different ROM, and that didn't make any difference. It still did it. So.
Yeah, because if the slot's not selected, it won't get through to the controllers.
Yeah, yeah, that's that other poke that I gave, which was to the AND H FF7F, AND H 23. The first value should be the ROM slot, and then the second half of that value is the actual I/O. So like where it says AND H23, the 2 is the ROM slot, and the 3 is the I/O slot. So that should have worked, because I actually had tested it here on my MPI to see, you know, how things were working back and forth. So it should have worked.
I just tried the one poke.
The FF40 one?
Yeah, 40 comma. Is it comma 0?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, it's supposed to shut the drive motors off. But if as David's saying, if the MPI's hardware select, like where I/O is supposed to go, is set to a different slot, the drive will never see it. So of course it won't shut off. So if you combine his poke with the FF40, like do his poke first to select the slot, and then do it, that would prove that that is the issue, that it's not reselecting the slot properly.
You know, it turns off though if you hit reset.
Well, yeah, that's because the chip and the components are designed to reset back to a 0 state on reset. So
review what the issue was originally too. You have a real floppy controller in which slot? That's always supposed to be in slot 4, right?
Okay, I had slot 4 was the floppy controller. Mm-hmm. Slot 3 was the SDC
Okay.
And no other boards are in there. And then I would put the script in to unload drive 0, and then I would turn off drive 1 so that I'd use that from my drives. And then I would put the expression in to save a program on the SDC, and it would say okay, and then I would do a backup 1 to 0, and it would go back and forth, back and forth. Actually, the drive stays on, and the little light on the SDC goes on and off, and then when that's all done, the drive light stayed on, and the OK prompt came up.
So it acted like it.
Stay on, yeah.
It acted like it went through the processing, right?
Yeah.
But what was the end result? You got a corrupted disk on your copy?
No,
or?
nothing. No, the
It
only
just
issue
it didn't even run.
The only issue is that the drive stayed on. The
So
motor
it did do the copy properly, though, right?
Yeah, it did. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't know why, but I thought I saw a picture where you were mentioning there was some contamination or something like that. To
No.
the,
No,
okay.
in fact, it was kind of just something to talk about, I guess, because
Okay.
it's an issue, but it's really nothing. If I hit reset, everything stays the same, and the motor stops. So, I mean, it's no big deal. Although sometimes people get nitpicky and they want to make everything perfect, you know.
Yeah.
So I just thought.
Yeah.
I'm sure Nick has no idea what you're talking about.
Well, yeah, that's something that we probably should point that out to Darren, because that's probably something that should be an easy fix for him to do in SDC DOS, because it's just something it should switch back to the slot that the FDC's in, and shut off the drive when it's done, and then switch back to the slot that the SDC's in.
Yeah,
But,
I thought maybe the SDC was controlling, and then it would stop just before it turns, or maybe it was the floppy drive controllers working, and then it stops abruptly because the SDC takes over or something like that.
No, it's all software control at this point.
Okay.
Because normally for this was something that was brought up with that MAME issue. Not related, but it's a similar technique, is that for keeping your floppy disk access faster, you have all your drives running, so that way you can quickly have access to each drive. When you switch from one to the other, the motor's already running.
Yeah,
so
you don't wait
have
for it to spin up. Yeah.
Right. So basically, in the case of multi floppy disk controller setups, you do the same thing, because there's been people that have run multiple floppy disk controllers in the CoCo before. So using the SDC and a real FDC is no different than using 2 or 3 real FDCs. You just have to have the MPI, you do pokes, you switch slots, copy the data in, switch slots, copy the data back out. It's same technique from the mid-'80s. So it's just something that probably was just slightly overlooked. Might have to bring it up to Darren Atkinson, because he's the one that handles the firmware and the SDC DOS patches. So,
Can you say he's not on Facebook at all?
No, there's actually quite a few people that refuse to use Facebook.
We've had this conversation, which
and I don't think this is probably because everybody has their likes and dislikes, and this is, it's a respect if they choose not to use it, that's their choice. So
yeah, I'm friends with a guy who had a little company called Sportswear. I don't know if you guys ever remember that in Rainbow.
Yeah.
But he was in Toledo, Ohio, and I bought my first machine from him, and he made a bunch of disc utilities, and he was into war games and did some war games. Anyway, I sent a message to him. He says he's only on Facebook for his daughter. His daughter is she's a a girl that goes on TV and does spots on TV. What do you call it? Like she's a reporter.
Okay.
And so he just follows her on there. And I said, well, things are really happening in the Coco world. And this was a while back when I did it. And then I did it again on Messenger. I said, you might want to take a look and see if your sportswear company can maybe come back into being again, And I said, there's emulators and stuff. Take a look. And then I left the link for the website, or, the Facebook group.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. He's a really nice guy. He had a window company. My wife worked for him, and they used Model 4s and had VisiCalc back then. They actually ran the business with it. It was ThermoGuard windows.
Yeah, the choices people make on how they choose to communicate are they're as unique as the individuals themselves, and so I get some people don't want to divulge their privacy and etc. And I'm not here to cast judgment, but it is sure a hell of a lot easier to communicate via Facebook than it is the mailing list or a Yahoo group or the IRC chat. Or I can't speak to the IRC chat. I've never been on there. Once the 21st century hit, I started using some of those tools. And this is the paradigm of everything, is that, yes, we are fans of a retro machine, but I also know that there are modern conveniences, and I choose to use those for most things. Retro is a hobby. It's not a lifestyle. So if there's a modern form of communication, I will choose that. And yes, there's concerns with privacy and everything else, and that's not what this show is about. But yeah, the fact that we have a mailing list, a Facebook group, an IRC chat, that there are some Yahoo groups still out there, possibly some smoke signals happening, maybe some crop circles are going on somewhere, maybe there's a couple of coffee cans with very long strings somewhere else. Plenty of ways to communicate. I'm not here to judge. I just know for me, Facebook is really super convenient.
Yeah. I'm just waiting for all the rib systems to come back online through Telnet so we can fight on it and get the echoes going again.
Yeah. So I just think that's funny. When we talk about we're trying to bring our community together, there are so many different ways that we're already separated from each other. There's OS 9 versus, disk, extended color, basic, you name it. Good stuff. So this is an issue. This is now another known issue. We're discovering issues. David is the guy who we say he breaks things, but what he's really doing is he's finding the flaws in the matrix, right? So he's finding the glitches in the matrix, and he's communicating that, and we're hopefully getting those patched. So one of the glitches that we discovered not too long ago was the MAME floppy controller emulation that actually could lead to disk corruption. So that's not a good thing, right? And so that is kind of got a workaround still happening. Then there was something you mentioned. You just barely mentioned it at the beginning, David, and I don't know how much time you have left, but the whole toolshed thing that you're also involved in. Do you have time to talk a little bit about toolshed and some of the limitations of FAT32 and 32-bit operating systems and stuff? Or
okay. Well, there's, as far as the toolshed project, for most people with like the CoCoSDC and DriveWire, most people have been using, because really in practicality, 128 megabyte hard disk image is more than enough for OS 9 and all the available software for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I know
just interject one thing, I think, because not all viewers are going to even know what toolshed is. Maybe we should explain what is this thing we're talking about.
Yeah, the toolshed project was put together to give different utilities that you could have on Linux, Mac, and Windows, so that you could manipulate, create, and transfer files between that native OS and the disk images for like OS 9 or Disk Extended Color Basic disk images. There's even a tool in there for working with cassettes. There's a cassette, or the Color Extended Basic executable for doing cassette stuff. So there's all these tools that's in there to make your virtual Coco life a little easier. It's just little things that, since I've been doing this as experiments, because we've been doing all these, virtual hard disks with the CoCoSDC, drive wire, and of course it's like, well, Nitrous 9 or OS 9 period could handle up to a 4 gig volume. And back in the 80s, that's like way forward thinking, because who the hell would think about wanting a 4 gig worth of storage? That's like insane, but
yeah, with a machine with 64K RAM.
So and so I started trying to create an actual 4 gigabyte disk image for OS 9. And that's when I started running into little hiccups. Like if you're on a 32-bit OS, when you compile the toolshed, well, 32 bits, your cutoff is a 2 gig file. So if your disk image, if you want a 4 gig disk image, you can't do it. Unless you, during compilation, you have to tell it to use 64-bit file offset values. So that's something that no one ever thought of. So that's something that was just a minor tweak. Tormod's already taking care of that on the repo. So now when you build it, whether it's a 32-bit OS or 64-bit, now the file offset stuff's been taken care of.
Okay.
The other thing is that there was a routine to automatically detect the best cluster size. So that way, because you only have, I believe, what is it, 2 bytes, Curtis, for the bit map.
The sector map, you mean, or cluster map? Yeah, you have
bit map.
You have 2 bytes for the, like you have 16 bits.
Right.
16-bit number, and then each bit represents a cluster. So you've got 65,535 times 8.
Yeah, which is 5,420. Yeah, 524,280.
Has this become math talk?
Clusters.
let me do that in hex.
So it's just certain things that the way the routine that was in there to determine the automatic clusters was ending up that it would flip the value, and then at a 4 gig image, the cluster size was 0. So of course, when you're trying to do that, well, you can't divide a value by 0, so you get a floating point error. So there's just been some submissions that will eventually be put onto the repo to correct for that, and then there's other things that have already been corrected. So it's just a work in progress, that just little things that no one ever thought of would be who's 4 gig, so.
Yeah, because nobody had really tried to push it to the 4 gig limits. And then you were hitting some problems, I think, with FAT32, like for older Windows systems, that the file system itself for Windows can't handle a file bigger than 2 gig.
Right, and for the people that use a CoCoSDC, if you want a hard disk image, a 2 gig image is the max that you can use on the CoCoSDC, because it uses FAT32 on the SD cards. So you just can't.
So the breaking news is right now, if you want to create a virtual hard drive, unfortunately we are limited to 2 gigabits and 2 gigabytes in size.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. And with the vast array of Coco software, how are we ever going to squeeze all that into 2 gigs?
For Nitrous 9 stuff, 128 meg should be more than enough. It's just some people, see, for me, I like to go to the extreme. Can it do it? Okay, let's push it. And that's how you find the problem.
I gotta have more cowbell.
I have to say, though, we could start actually hitting this limit if we get the drivers in Nitrous 9 to handle the streaming function of the newer SDC stuff, and you start throwing podcasts on there and video versions of the podcast. These will be many, many megabytes and sometimes gigabytes.
There you go.
You may start running out of room.
Okay, that's a terrible problem to have that we will then have to address. Right?
Yes. Well, Dave's already starting. He's forward thinking.
He's forward thinking.
You can also have multiple cards.
Yes, we need to pause the research on male enhancement and get back to priorities and getting our hard drives in order here, folks.
That is to run the Coco SDC because you can handle up to a 32 gigabyte SD card in the Coco SDC. So you could have multiple 2 gig virtual hard disks. So that's really not a bad thing. I know some people want to try putting Nitrous 9 and multiple virtual disk basic volumes on one hard disk image, but if you're on the Coco SDC, technically, do you really need to do that? Because you just mount.
Well,
right.
You could also ask the question, did you really need to push the 2 gigabyte boundary barrier on a hard drive? So, to each their own. So.
Well, that depends on how long our CoCoTalks get. If we digitize the video version of it and throw it on a card to play it on a real Coco using this streaming,
yes.
Yeah, you might. These 3.5-hour shows, might be pushing something. So.
That's
we'll have to ask
cool.
Ed. I don't know how much is transcoding to the Coco on the Coco SDC, how much a 3.5-hour video show would take.
Right. All right, well, I think we need to take another break here in just a minute because I also have to take a restroom break. But who wants to go next after our break, Ron or Bruce? Would you guys like to go next?
Let Bruce go. I can wait.
Okay.
I'm in no rush. I wasn't. Yeah.
All right. Well, don't fight over it too much, guys. All right. Well, we're gonna take a commercial break. I'll be back in a few minutes and we'll pick this up. So very cool. Thanks, Dave.
All right. Later, everyone.
We will return after these messages.
Hey everybody, this is Bill Noble, co-author of Nitrous 9. You are listening to CoCoTALK Live, the leading live CoCoTalk show.
It's a Radio Shack Merry Christmas.
This year, I needed to give a real family pleaser.
Honey, please, help me with this budget.
How about a new game, Dad? Please.
And I found it. Radio Shack's Color Computer 2. On sale for just $99.95. It entertains, educates, manages. It's expandable and affordable. Now that really pleases me.
The Color Computer 2. Sale priced for Christmas. Only at Radio Shack.
Hey guys, CoCoTALK here. And if you're a fan of vintage computing and retro gaming, you're going to love our retro swag shop at 8bit256.com, featuring hand-drawn custom designs and pixel art by Instagram artist Joel M. Adams. We've got the brand new official CoCoTALK t-shirt, I'm a Coconut t-shirt, and all kinds of other cool video game and arcade related artwork. Check out 8bit256.com for all your retro swag needs today.
Some people have big plans after school. You know what Elliot's going to do? Jeff, too. Elliot's at work on a book report using Scripsit on Radio Shack's Color Computer 3. It hooks up to his TV. And Jeff's at his Radio Shack Color Computer 3 playing the newest football game. But wait, what's Elliot doing playing new Super Pitfall? And Jeff's having a blast with a new math tutor. You never know what you might try with more than 100 programs for fun and learning. Radio Shack's Color Computer 3 comes with everything you see here. Other items each sold separately. Only at Radio Shack.
Hey guys, Original Gamer CoCoTALK here, and if you're listening to CoCoTalk, chances are you're interested in the color computer. If you'd like to find out more about the color computer, then visit my Coco links page at imacoconut.com. There you will find communities, podcasts, YouTube channels, project sites, blog sites, hardware, software, buy, sell, trade, you name it. So for all things color computer, visit imacoconut.com. That's I-M-A, coconut.com, and tell them the Original Gamer CoCoTALK sent you. And we are back. So what was your question there, Curtis? Any thoughts on getting video bumpers as well as just audio with a still photo? What do you mean by that? Ah, you're muted, Curtis.
Sorry about that. The bumpers that you got, like with Bill and Rick and stuff here, with just a still photo and then they're just speaking in the background. I was just wondering if you thought, and given any thought to them actually doing a recording of them talking.
Yeah, I have to go with what is sent to me. So when I'm sent an audio clip, the best I can do is put a still photo to it. I actually have some. I have at least one video bumper, but yeah, whatever people send me is what I will play. So I
didn't know if you had a stipulation you wanted it only one way.
No, I just asked for it, and I'm happy. You know what? I'm just happy I got something.
Okay. I'll do one in about a month when I get some time.
Yeah. Cool. All right, so flip a coin. Do we want to do the Bruce Moore OS 9 discussion, basic 09 discussion? Yes, Bruce, you're muted too.
I am?
Oh, no, okay. Never mind. You just weren't. Your lips were moving. That's so cool.
He's giving his mime talk.
Or do we want to look at Ron Delvaux' very cool digitizing sample? You want to show us your stuff, Ron?
Do what you want, bud.
Before you do, though, I have to introduce you properly, all right? So we have got a proper introduction for Ron. So hold on just a second, folks, and be prepared to be impressed here. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for Ron's Garage with Ron Delvaux, featuring a peek into the past with Ron's retro collection. Take it away, Ron. Hello. How do you like that? Grant is here. Grant Leighty has joined us too. Hey, Grant. Welcome to CoCoTALK, and feel free to join us on Skype. So, Ron, we certainly appreciate you. You have been posting all kinds of cool pictures on Facebook and on the Coco group and the Tandy 1000 group. You've got an impressive collection of a lot of really cool vintage hardware, and we're very pleased to have you share some of that with us. And today you're going to show us something really cool that's been running in the background. So tell us about what you got.
All right, first off, I want to show you that these are some of the things that I have in my collection.
Oh, wow. That is a
dust covers
sealed in plastic.
Computer dust cover in the box.
Wow, in the bag.
And a hard drive cover.
Oh, a dust cover for the hard drive. Perfect for all your proper ventilation needs.
Perfect for ventilating your hard drive.
Yes.
Has anyone ever had their stuff in storage and pulled it out, and you've got an old cover, and it kind of has changed over the years to a sticky, ugly thing? Anybody?
Yes, my Coco 1 cover did that.
Oh, yeah, like because like rubber starts to deteriorate over time too. Rubber becomes really sticky and nasty and stuff. Yeah. And can you grab me a drumstick from over by the TV too? There's a blue drumstick. Okay, we have a special treat when you're done.
Some rainbows that were made like a newspaper.
Oh wow!
The last ones before they went under.
That is really neat.
I have a large collection. I think they were in 1992.
Wow, really nice, looking rainbows.
Huge
Thank
heads. You. It's just like the rainbow, only supersized.
Wow, and it's in color.
The last year and a half of rainbows, I think they did that as a cost-cutting measure for the old gloss.
That's really nice.
In fact, if I remember, Nitrous 9, that was the first ad was in one of those.
Yep, pretty neat. And then I have this digitizer running over here. It's the DS69B, I think. I had an A, and what happened was the thing stopped working. And so I sent it back to them, and they made it a B and sent it back to me fixed, which was cool. I did have a lot of time on it. Basically, I'm going to show you how it loads up and shows the MicroWorks thing. Can you see it good?
We can see it, but now because you're full screen, I have all the thumbnails, the little smaller icons. There you go. Pan down. There, that's perfect. That? Yeah, that's perfect. Okay. And while you're doing that too, I just want to make one comment too, because I realized something I said a long time ago in the interview when I was playing back. I think it was maybe the Dale Lear interview, because when you look at Skype, whoever's full screen is big, and so I mentioned something like, we have Dale Lear, and beneath him are some smaller icons, And I realized that with somebody listening to that might think that had to do with somebody's significance in the grand scheme of the Coco universe, which wasn't the implication there. It was really just that the thumbnails of their faces were smaller than his face there. But when I was listening to that playback, I'm like, wow, that probably sounded kind of schmucky. But yeah, so yeah, we have these little thumbnails of everybody else in the Skype call, and here we go. So we're looking at this Coco screen.
The program's called CC, C-SEE. And it runs a basic loader, and then you see the MicroWorks.
Oh yeah, I like that little graphical title screen there.
Yeah, and then it's just like your basic thing. It has at the top it says you can show your control panel, and it has I have this joystick, which is probably another neat thing. It has 2 buttons.
Yes.
See if I can orient myself right. There's a button on the front and on the top. Anyway, it doesn't support the other button on this one, but anyways, you can toggle back and forth and change the value. And then at the very top, let's see, it says 16 level picture menu, take a 5 level picture, fast scan level picture, 5 level picture rather, printer menu, you can print it. Disk menu can change to drive 0 to drive 1. Cassette menu, you can save it to cassette, believe it or not. And you can exit the program, and you can toggle the picture with the main menu, which is basically going for what's in the memory. So I put it on fast scan 5 level picture, and that's the control panel.
Wow.
Button. There's
That's so impressive. That is so impressive that
it's low level. You can do there's a bunch of different levels. If you go to the 16 level picture, you can take a 128 by 128 picture or a 256 by 256 picture. And then you can, when you see it, you can dither it 2 different ways. There's ordered and summation dither. And then there's a 16 color display, which is pretty ugly.
Oh, wow.
But there's nothing really in memory there. Let's see if I can take a picture. 120.
If I remember too, it had an option. It could save 16 levels of gray, and when you did printouts, you could actually see the full 16. If I remember, is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
And, and that's being fed with just like the yellow composite cable, right? It's an RCA input there?
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. It's,
okay.
RCA out on the VCR.
Okay.
And actually, I wanted to show you, since I'm an astrophotographer, I have telescopes and a little observatory in my backyard. I came up with this. This is a small camera that will fit in your eyepiece.
Okay.
And when I first tested this out in my observatory, it's I guess it's a composite out. And when you plug this in, you absolutely see nothing because it has to be hooked up to a telescope.
Ah.
So I knew the thing worked, but I didn't have that VCR until yesterday. I went to Goodwill and picked it up for $5.99. I have. I wanted to show you this. I have so much junk here. Let's see. Where did I put it?
Didn't you just post too? You got a couple of Model 100 portable computers at a thrift store?
Yes, I did.
You
for
booger.
$1. They were $49.
You booger. You booger.
I waited 2 weeks.
While he's looking there, you should mention John Linville's comment too.
Yeah, let's see. Let me scroll back here. So John Linville says, viewing the live video through the DS69 is what convinced me that reasonable video playback on a CoCo could be possible in the first place for what it's worth. Yes, very cool.
Wow, cool. Now you can see it's a pretty good picture from far
Yeah,
away.
yeah. Yeah.
From even close up, I mean.
That's kind of like me, too. I
Yeah.
take a pretty good picture from far away, too. So yeah.
I think the jury's still out on that.
Let's see. There's the pictures taken. Now I go back to here's the different dithers. I don't know if you can see, it's kind of dark.
Yeah, we can see it. What monitor is that, by the way?
This is the CM8.
CM8 on a CoCo 3. So we're looking at this with no artifacting.
Right.
Yeah, that's easier to see.
RGB mode. Yeah, no, that looks really nice.
This is summation dither.
Wow.
And then says here's a color.
Oh wow.
Kind of crazy.
Yeah, yeah, that's hurting my eyes.
Yeah.
Make it stop. Make it stop. I promise I'll be good.
And a quick question to Nick: You later did a digitizer yourself, the Digiscan, the RASCAN. Did you have any knowledge of how the DS69 worked, or was that a totally independent project, or?
I had more knowledge of the Amiga's DigiView digitizer and how it worked. So I tried to model the Digiscan or RASCAN on that. Not so much.
Okay, so it had nothing to do with the DS69 or 69B.
No.
Okay.
All right, so that's
it looks
pretty
really
much
good.
basically it. You save them off on your on drive 1 on a blank floppy. It's put in there, and you can save off whatever levels that you've captured. It's a lot of fun.
That's
neat.
neat.
It's a lot of fun to go back and look at. I used to have an old Quasar camera. It was about this big, had a lens on the front, had a handle on it, and it did nothing. All it did was provide a video, color video. It just had a cable that came out and went to a VCR that you recorded with. Now that is back, in the 80s, and that was probably a 70s, late 70s camera. But I did a lot of pictures of myself and things at home with that and digitized it.
That's
and now
cool.
You can't find a camera with a composite out.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of maybe that little camera I showed you. If I put a lens on there, I could probably get it to work like a camera, but it has to be able to focus. Plus, I don't know, I just might find something at Goodwill. You never know.
You just never know. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
In the live chat, Solstice was asking about a video demo. I think he's talking about Ed Snyder's media player, because he was asking about the kind of Japanese animation black and white video. What do we got there? Rainbow on disc. Ooh.
Yeah, I have a whole bunch of these too that I've.
Those are originals.
Yes.
God, you got such a treasured collection. I'd like to be in your will. I don't want you to pass anytime soon or anything, but I would just like to be your beneficiary. That's all.
Hey, Ron. There's
my rainbow
wow
collection. There's a lot of them in there. I don't know if I have them all, but I have a lot of them.
Wow, that is so cool. Hey, Ron, are you coming to Tandy Assembly?
I would like to. It depends on money,
Okay.
So
it'd be great to get you out there and get some of your collection on display.
If we pay off a couple of bills in time, it might be pretty easy to do it. But until
okay, that would be cool.
You guys had talked about this color mouse. I have that.
Neat. That looks like a actual Logitech Microsoft style mouse.
2-button one.
Yeah.
And then there's another gadget I wanted to show. People over the time have made interesting devices.
High-res interface for joystick and mouse. Cassette?
Yeah, cassette. And you could bypass the high-res and just have a regular joystick.
Okay.
Without having to unplug everything. You just put that in and flick a switch, and you've got a regular cassette port or the high-res.
You can see all these cables.
Wow. Quite the collection.
Yeah. It's pretty ingenious. Even on the back, it's labeled.
Wow. So you have your basic output ones, and then you've got multiple inputs that you can kind of switch through. Yeah.
So
that was kind of necessary, because the high-res joystick interface took a joystick port and the cassette port to work.
Right.
So if you wanted to load anything off cassette, you had to unplug everything and plug that in. You just have to flick the switch.
That's neat. That's neat.
There's one thing else I wanted to show is this is a Coco Max that I got from somebody. And remember, you had to have this in your machine. This is actually mine. I got this from somebody else. But on the top is a joystick port. You had to put a joystick in there because this is the high-res module, basically.
Okay. Right.
But are you guys aware that they somebody hacked it so that on Coco 1 or 2 you can run Coco Max without these?
Yeah. I don't remember who did it. Was it Chet Simpson who did the hack? I can't even remember now.
I don't know. It's not. Is that particular version in the archives?
I haven't looked, to be honest. I know I have it hidden away on one of my 800 discs somewhere, but
Yeah, that's another thing I have. I have a stack of bins that are full of floppies, and I went through a whole bunch of my Max files that are saved from this thing here, and from I think Coco Max makes them Max files.
Yeah,
they're low res artwork. And what's neat is I went through a lot of my stuff from work when I used to use the Coco for jobs. I would take this scanner here. Well, actually, I would take my camera out to a job. I would videotape the building, and then I'd come back and digitize the front of the building, and I'd make a sketch of the sign and put that up on the building so the customer could see what his sign would look like before, when I'm selling the job to him. He could get an idea what it's going to look like. Back then, it was like awesome. It was like nobody else did anything like that, and I was doing it with, it was black and white. It wasn't. It was like the precursor to new stuff. Nowadays they do it all the time, I'm sure. I've been out of it maybe 10 years, so I'm not sure in the sign business what they're doing, but I certainly would do it.
Yeah. That's like
what the sign looks like already, done.
Pre-visualization. You're basically showing like a render. Nowadays,
it's WYSIWYG for the sign industry.
Yeah. Nowadays, everybody's doing like virtual 3D tours, and you can design a blueprint and show you a 3D model of what something's going to look like. But back then, that was really revolutionary.
And this is my old Disto 4-in-1 controller with the option for a printer ribbon on the side.
Yeah, I had the 3-in-1 version myself.
It never was easy to carry around unless you roll it up. But that has software that they gave you, and it's all Coco 2 stuff. You can switch between DOSs. You hit DOS 0. First DOS comes up as CDOS. Second one is my ADOS, and third one is RS-DOS, and then the last one was J&M DOS on that controller. So it's fun to software switch between them. You can only do it. You could do it either by pokes, or and you could do that, I guess, in a program if you wanted to access one. But it's neat to when you first start up to go ahead and switch to the one you want and take off and do what you're going to do. So that's cool. That's pretty much all I have today. I can show you my Model 102s that I got. I ran across a program that you can input. It's a machine language program that changes the date because it's not year 2000 compliant. When you turn it on, it says January 1st, 1900 or something.
That's really retro.
Yeah, so if you run this little binary program, it'll set the last 2 digits to, it's not even 2000. It just sets the digits to the year. And in that machine, when you set the date and the date of the week, it wasn't linked at all to the year, so it's an easy fix. That was fun.
Cool.
Next week after this one, I'll be back and I'll show other stuff that I've got. I've got a ton of cartridges. I have tons and tons of these things here.
Yeah.
I have some a whole bunch that are in their original boxes still, and that's fun to look at. They've never been touched.
Neat.
That's about it.
That's cool. That's cool. Rick Adams just joined us. Hey, Rick, how are you?
Hey, Rick.
Very, very cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
Very cool section. So I now have something that I want to share with you guys because something has just arrived. Can you guys hear that?
More cowbell?
Yeah. So here's the story to this. I decided that I want to add music to CoCoTalks, and I want it to be Coco music, and so we can have a little bit of audio interlude in between segments, which would be a nice break on the podcast listeners. So in the process of compiling and recording color computer music,